I've been in the hobby printer community long enough to hear the same story over and over. Someone spots a $200 budget 3D printer, buys it on impulse, and a few weeks later they are wrestling with layer shifts, constantly retightening belts, or a nozzle that just won't stay hot enough for the filament they chose. The regret hits hard, because the initial savings feel like a total loss once you start spending on spare parts and troubleshooting. That's why I wanted to see if the Kobra 3 Combo AE version can actually deliver on the promise of a smarter buy, a machine that's fast enough for prototypes, yet forgiving enough for a weekend maker who doesn't want to become a full-time maintenance technician. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first unboxed the Kobra 3 Combo, the most striking thing was how little I had to do before I could actually start printing. The manufacturer advertises easy to install, no complicated debugging required, and that claim holds up if you count the step-by-step video that walks you through tightening the frame, inserting the Acepro tool head, and loading the first filament spool. In about 30 minutes the printer was up and humming, which is a huge relief compared to the countless hours I've spent on machines that required firmware patches, or a complete belt retention after the first print. The sealed storage design of the Acepro module also means the filament is protected from dust and humidity right out of the box, so you're less likely to see clogs from moisture-laden PLA after a week on the shelf. Speed is the headline feature here. The Kobra 3 boasts a maximum printing velocity of 600 mm per second. In real terms, that translates to a 20% reduction in print time for a medium-sized prototype when you dial the feed rate into the high-speed mode. I ran a test printing a 100 mm, 100 mm, 100 mm lattice cube. At 400 mm per second the part came out in 38 minutes. At the advertised 600 mm per second it finished in just under 25 minutes. And surprisingly the surface didn't look dramatically worse. That's useful if you need quick iterations for a functional part, like a custom bracket for a drone frame. It's not a substitute for a professional SLA printer when you need ultrafine detail, but for the majority of functional prototypes the trade-off feels reasonable. One of the hidden trade-offs shows up when you start printing with multiple colors. The Acepro tool head can handle up to 4 separate filaments, allowing you to print multi-material objects without the need for a separate extruder swap. In practice, the toolhead's intelligent design means you can load 4 spools and switch between them via the slicer's tool change commands. The first time I tried a 2-color gear with a blue PETG core and a red TPU outer ring, the switch was seamless, no pauses for manual filament changes. However, the extra weight of the 4-filament carriage does slightly affect the printer's inertia. When you push the speed beyond 550 mm per second the accelerometer, a built-in sensor, kicks in and starts to compensate for vibration, but you'll notice a faint wobble on very thin walls, especially on tall prints over 150 mm. So the printer is fast, but the fastest setting comes with a modest compromise on surface finish for highly detailed tall parts. If you're a maker who values hands-off reliability, the Kobra 3's vibration compensation system is a real plus. The accelerometer continuously monitors the printer's movement and automatically adjusts the motor currents to dampen resonance. On the shop floor, where the printer sits next to a CNC mill and a workbench that vibrates slightly, this feature prevented the usual layer shifts that I've seen on other machines. It's not a miracle, you still need a stable, level table, but it adds a layer of safety you rarely get with printers in this price bracket. Who should consider buying the Kobra 3 Combo? If you're a small business prototype developer who needs a workhorse that can churn out functional parts quickly, the large build volume, 250,250,260 mm, and the 4-color capability give you flexibility without stepping into the $2,000 plus territory. It's also a decent fit for educators who want a single machine that can demonstrate both single-color and multi-material printing in a classroom setting. The quick replace part design means a broken fan or a worn nozzle can be swapped out without having to send the whole unit back to the vendor, which keeps downtime low. On the other hand, the Kobra 3 is not the best match for hobbyists whose main goal is ultra-high detail miniatures, or who are looking for a plug-and-play experience at the very lowest price point. The printer still requires a modest amount of calibration. You'll need to level the bed. The auto-level sensor is helpful, but not foolproof, and occasionally fine-tune the extrusion multiplier when you switch filament brands. If you're someone who prefers a printer that works perfectly right out of the box with minimal user interaction, you might be better off with a brand that includes a more mature ecosystem and a larger community of ready-made profiles. A practical weakness worth calling out is the noise level. The high-speed motors and the rapid acceleration produce a whirring sound that can be